Welcome into another episode of Denmark and Marsh. I am Dylan Denmark, your producer for Jaguars Today and Hacker After Dark. I will be finally getting off of XL Primetime tomorrow when JJ Lacello comes back finally from his honeymoon. For the ones that don't know, he's been in Florence and in Italy the last 2 weeks. And as Graham Marsh, you can get him on Twitter at 1010XL Graham. You can get me on Twitter at 1010XL Denmark. The main reason we want to do this podcast was because, Graham, you needed to do another pod. You did one with Tommy Mack this morning.
That's true.
You did one with Campo and Joe. So now we got to finally get your thoughts on everything that's happened today. Josh Allen, the tag deadline has passed. The recording of this pod is 4:25. So we all know who's been tagged. The Jaguars have let go of Rashawn Jenkins, Foye Fatukasi yesterday, and Darius Williams. That was the big head scratcher. That was the one that kind of surprised everybody. So let's kind of start there. Is it bad business that Josh Allen got tagged by the Jaguars? It seemed like it kind of got the sense that this morning that something was going to happen, that he was possibly going to get a long-term extension for whatever it was, 4 or 5 years. A little over $100 million, probably around that $30 million range, and it didn't come to that. Instead, he gets tagged. Now, we don't know what Josh Allen wanted. We don't know what Balky was saying. Hey, I think you're this, and, Josh Allen's saying, I want more. We don't know those details yet. So just on the surface, do you think it's bad business that Josh Allen was tagged?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't think it was bad business because really good football players get franchise tagged all the time. So Trent Baalke's not the first GM to use the franchise tag on a really good player that deserves a long-term contract extension. He won't be the last. Particularly in this instance when pretty much everyone, I think, believes and understands that the franchise tag is really just to buy time, to allow more time for Josh Allen's camp and the Jaguars to negotiate a long-term deal that they can both agree on. It was released in a statement earlier today from the Jaguars about this and why the franchise tag happened. I'm going to go find that momentarily, and I'm going to read that. We just found it a second ago. From Jaguars general manager Trent Baalke. This was posted 33 minutes ago as of this taping. It's almost 4:30. 30 minutes past the deadline, but of course this was announced a couple hours ago. From Trent Baalke, we were not able to reach an agreement on a contract extension with Josh before today's deadline, and thus we have tagged him. We certainly value Josh's leadership on the field, in the locker room, and in the community. Our objective to keep Josh in Jacksonville in the coming years remains unchanged, and negotiations will continue. That statement just kind of says out loud what we all know. He's getting tagged because they haven't come to an agreement yet. I don't think it's bad business. I think people hate Trent Baalke, so they're going to call it bad business. I'm not a huge Trent Baalke fan either, so I certainly understand. But I think another GM could do this exact same thing and people wouldn't call it bad business if they like the GM more than they currently do. It's not bad business. It's just practical. It's just what they needed to do to buy themselves time. Of course, the bigger reason people are freaking out about Josh Allen getting tagged has nothing to do with Josh Allen, which you and I both know. It has to do with Calvin Ridley. Because if Josh Allen is getting the franchise tag to extend the amount of time they have to pursue his negotiation, they are burning their franchise tag on Josh Allen and can no longer use it on Calvin Ridley, which means that when free agency opens up, Calvin Ridley will be able to speak with other teams completely freely as an unrestricted free agent and sign with whoever the hell he wants. When we first started this podcast, we talked about this, and we talked about Calvin, and I think we both said we're kind of 55-45-ish on Calvin, if he's going to be a Jaguar or not. I think we said, if I recall, 55-45, we think he stays. That's probably flipped for me, and probably even more so. It's probably, honestly, now about 70-30. I think he's gone. What do you think?
Yeah, I think he's gone. I think somebody's going to offer him a bag. And I even thought that before Josh Allen got tagged. I kind of came to the conclusion that he was going to get the bag. Do you think people's mind, like just fans, do you think this changes if the scenario happens like Evan Ingram a year ago, where Ingram was tagged and then he got the extension before camp started? What was it, in June or July?
Something like that, yeah.
It was one of the two. If Allen ends up getting the, just say $30 million a year, 4 years, so 4 years, $120 million, does that kind of like none of this means anything to you? It's just kind of like whatever, or do you think that he should have gotten the 4 years of 120 now, and then you worry about everything else?
I think it will matter if Calvin Ridley is on a different football team. Because again, I think people were upset last year that Evan Ingram got tagged, but I think most people understood still how this was going to work. Trent Baalke has a history of this. He's done this before. Other GMs have done this as well. It isn't just him. That it's not, unless they just really can't come to an agreement, which I don't see happening. I think they just need more time. I would be shocked if Josh Allen plays on the franchise tag this year.
I don't even think he comes to camp if he's if he's still on the tag in August. I don't think he's here.
I agree.
He's not here until 2 days before the first game, whatever that is.
I agree. And then if that happens, then it's a disaster. Then it is bad business. Then all of this is a disaster if that happens. Because then you sacrifice the chance to keep Calvin Ridley. You're not paying a guy who was a premier edge rusher in the NFL last year, who is homegrown talent for you, and now that guy's holding out as well. So then that would be really bad business. I agree with you. I don't believe Josh Allen is going to be willing to play on the franchise tag, at least not. He won't be friendly about it, if you will. I think there will be a holdout. I think he will miss training camp time. And listen, we've talked about this on, I forget what episode, but we have talked about this before. I've fallen into this trap. Other fans have fallen into this trap. You think that because of a guy's personality and his leadership and dedication to a team, you think that because of that, they won't hold out. They won't do stuff like that. Oh, Josh, that's not Josh. He won't do. That's not true. Okay? Josh Allen is a great leader. He's a great dude. It's great that he's in Jacksonville. That said, he's earned his money and wants his money. So he will do any means necessary, more than likely, to get that money that he deserves and that long-term security and extension. Plus, you have to believe that the Jaguars still think, of course they're going to always say it publicly, but you have to think that internally, they still believe they're in a win-now window.
Yes.
Right? That window from 2 years ago is still alive. Because again, Trent Baalke said it in the press conference, which tells me everything I needed to know. And I actually agreed with him when he said this. He said, look, was the ending of the year disappointing? Yes. Was missing the playoffs disappointing? Yes. Did we expect to miss the playoffs? No, we didn't. But it's not like this team won 3 games. Okay, this team had a winning year. They won 9 games. So it's reasonable to believe that there still is a world where they can add some pieces, get hot at the end of the year instead of in the beginning to middle, and finish strong and get to the playoffs and take your chances. That said, getting a deal done with Josh Allen, a long-term deal, significantly helps your books for this year, which would free up even more money to go get other free agents this offseason, which I believe that their moves that they've made today and yesterday, cutting Foley Fatukasi, cutting Darius Williams, cutting Rayshawn Jenkins, and potentially letting Ridley leave. We don't know for sure how that's going to play out, but you're leaving that up to a chance now. I believe that this all signs are indicating to they want to spend some good money in free agency.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm there yet. I think they want to get a guy. I don't know how many guys you want to get because with the cuts that they've made the last 2 days, they've gotten an extra $20 million. So right now the Jaguars have a total of $50 million as of the moment that they can get a free agency and do what they want. The Josh Allen thing with a franchise tag, it seems like it's bad business because it's almost like fans take it as a term of disrespect. It's you got $17.5 million and he's a homegrown guy and he's been here. The Jaguars have only signed 2 first-round picks from the window 2008, I think, to 2020. They've only given two of their guys that were drafted in the first round a second contract, Blake Bortles and Tyson Alualu. So that kind of builds into it, even though we all know that this whole front office wasn't even here for the vast majority of that time. It kind of builds into that narrative. Josh Allen will get an extension eventually, and it'll be sometime in June or July, and he'll get paid. I don't know if it's top of the market, but it'll be somewhere around that $30 million, which leads us to this next topic. What happens to Calvin Ridley? Calvin Ridley, we talked about it, me, you, and everybody on the station. It was like during the year, everybody's such a prisoner of the moment. You have a good game, and everybody's like, "Oh, let's go! We got to get him now. He's got to be here."
Right.
Then he has a bad game, and it's like, "Man, this guy, he ain't playing the year, and this and that." And then
he doesn't know the routes. He doesn't know where to be,
and too close to Christian Kirk on a lot of these things. And there's good and bad with a lot of players.
With every player,
this
basically.
This is my question, and this is my, I guess, my thesis. If I'm Jacksonville and I'm Trent Baalke, I give a contract to Calvin Ridley and forget money at this point and the contract. If I give you a contract and I say, okay, you sign right here, the league year starts at 4:00. You have till 4:05. If that, you walk. I think that's where I'm at. And I don't even care about the whole second and third round pick. If I believe, and I think Calvin Ridley, I think he does make this football team better. I would rather him stay than us take a chance on a receiver in the second and third round. But if I had to pick either between him staying and giving up a second round pick or him walking and giving up a third, Calvin Ridley staying on this football team, and he's making Jacksonville better.
I agree in terms of the compensation, but the problem with that is, like you were saying a second ago, like forget about the money. You can't forget about the money. If he wants, in my opinion, it's very likely that the money Calvin's going to want is going to cause him to be a decent amount overpaid for what he is.
Oh, as is every
which is how the market works, of course. We know that. And I'm fine with that. I'm fine with overpaying him a little bit. But there is a line to me. Like, one of my favorite things, you kind of just hinted at it a minute ago, like how fickle fans are and how this is a microwave society, and it depends on, depending on the week, fans are going to think X player is the greatest player of all time at their position or needs to get cut tomorrow. And that happened all year with Calvin Ridley. The problem is when you go down the list of what wide receivers are getting paid and what Calvin Ridley potentially would probably command on the open market, I don't believe he's worth the money that he's probably going to end up getting paid somewhere. So the tag in Jacksonville would have prevented him from getting that contract, of course, which would have been awesome. But like I wrote this down because I think it's reasonable to believe that Calvin will get a somewhat comparable deal to the deal Mike Evans just got. It'll be less because he's not as good of a player as Mike Evans, but Calvin is younger than Mike Evans. And I think a shorter term, like 2-year type of deal, even if it is a big money deal somewhere for Calvin, is what I think that's what you're looking at. I think a pretty rich front-loaded 2-year contract is what Calvin is looking at, as opposed to like Josh Allen, you're looking at like a 4 or 5 year deal you're trying to make happen. Mike Evans, who got paid today or yesterday? I think it was yesterday.
Yeah, yesterday.
So Mike Evans was it was Mike Evans and T. Higgins were the two other potential wide receivers to hit undrafted or to hit unrestricted free agency. Apologies. That would be considered better players than Calvin Ridley. They're now, neither of them are available, which is why Calvin is going to be the best receiver on the market. T. Higgins got franchise tagged by the Bengals. Mike Evans just signed a new contract. It is a 2-year deal worth $52 million. It's $20.5 million per year. $41 million in face value of the contract, so you assume $11 million is a signing bonus. Guaranteed $29 million. And his salary this year is going to be about $20.5, so most of that is guaranteed. Okay, assuming he plays this year, and he'll probably be back with the Bucs next year. So he's going to get most of this money, okay? That's a pretty rich deal. Mike Evans is how much better than Calvin Ridley? Significantly, a little bit?
In between the two. He's definitely better than Calvin Ridley. And this is also another thing. Like, when we talk about contracts, and we're talking about what he is right now and going for the next 2 years, not what he's done. Mike Evans has obviously been better than Calvin Ridley. I think Mike Evans, is probably a couple hundred yards more better and a couple more touchdowns. So it's not a ginormous gap, but it's not like, you're splitting hairs between the two.
So I just looked this up. It feels like Mike Evans is a lot older. Mike Evans is 30. Calvin Ridley's 29. I would think that the one discrepancy that would be in Calvin's favor is that he's younger, but he's not that much. He's only 1 year younger. It feels like Mike Evans is older than 30.
Well, yeah, because, golly.
Because he's been playing and he's been productive his entire, every single year. He's at 1,000 yards every single year.
I think Ridley came out of high school at 19.
Yeah.
And then he went 3 years. And then, Mike Evans was, I think when he came into the league, he was really young. Because that's the reason why for those two.
And look, Mike Evans is a Hall of Famer. Okay. So First ballot. Yeah. Pretty unquestioned. So I'm not sitting here telling you that Calvin Ridley is going to get this exact deal Mike Evans got. But I am telling you that a wide receiver that was a threat to hit the open market that his team really needed to hold on to commanded this much as an older player at 30. Now, I wouldn't call Mike Evans old. I think he's still got a lot of gas left in the tank, but an older player. It's not like he's 25, right? So I think you can expect Calvin Ridley on the open market for a team that's desperate for a wide receiver that has cap space to pay him at least somewhat close to this. If you're Trent Baalke, okay, so Mike Evans' deal is 2 years, 52. It's 20.5 per year. Would you pay Calvin 17 a year?
Yes.
I think I would too, but it's a discussion. It's not
I would give him it's like 2 years, 34 million total, 17 a year.
I think I would do that.
I would do that, and I'm not even thinking about it.
Okay, so let's say someone comes in and says, I'll pay Calvin 2 years, 38.
I'd still take it. I would sign Calvin right now for 2 years, 38.
You would match that if you're the Jaguars. And
it gets iffy for me once you get to the 21, 22 plus. Because I think that from that Mike Evans deal, and we all probably know that somebody else, I don't know who, because another guy you didn't mention was Michael Pittman. He got tagged in Indy.
Yeah, I did forget about that.
So they're not going to they probably won't get big time extensions in the next week or two. But Calvin Ridley is looking at that, or his agent's looking at that and going, okay, we're going to set the market roughly around this. And I think that if he does get bids from other teams, it's going to be in the mid-20s. And that's where I kind of back out and I go, it's not worth it to me.
Yeah.
It's not worth it for me to, one, pay that much and also give Atlanta my second-round pick.
So this is kind of myself, like you were saying, this is also where I start to run into issues with what I think the general discourse is with the fan base. Fans get so caught up, especially when a guy makes plays, in, just pay him whatever he wants. Pay him whatever he wants. Fans say that pay him whatever he wants. Pay 41 whatever he wants. Pay Calvin whatever he wants. You gotta stay here. Everyone has a price that's too high. Okay, Josh Allen, I tend to think you can be a little bit closer to the pay him whatever he wants argument. But with Calvin, here's the problem. Say they pay him a pretty hefty deal and keep him around. If they do that, the fan base is going to be overjoyed that they keep Calvin Ridley, right? I think we could both agree on that.
Easily.
The fan base is melting right now because Calvin Ridley's probably going to be out the door with the franchise tagging of Josh Allen, okay? Let's say they pay him significant money. Is that fan discourse going to be the same in week 5 if Calvin runs the wrong route and it ends up being a pick 6 because of it?
Well, no, then it'll be, we're paying this guy all this money.
Or
why is Baalke doing this?
Yes, it's going to be Baalke, you dumbass. We all told you shouldn't have paid him. You should have let his ass walk. But fans get to do that because they're not paid to make these decisions.
Fan is short for fanatic.
And a fan spends money to go to the games and watch the games. GMs get paid. So I get it. But you can't be a pay him whatever he wants guy. And then if that guy struggles at all, I'll be like, why the hell we pay this guy?
Yeah, you can't.
You also can't be a pay him whatever he wants guy. And then in free agency, if they're not spending a bunch of money on other positions, be like, what the hell are we doing? Why aren't we paying everybody? The salary cap does exist. I know the Rams made us think it's a myth, but like it is a thing. Like you do have to make decisions.
And the thing is, like, fans obviously always want to pay their guys, but you get to the issue where, okay, you pay Josh Allen, then you pay Ridley, you're going to pay probably Trevor next year, you pay all these guys, and then you're going to be hamstrung.
Travis Etienne's going to want a new deal.
Yep,
Tyson Campbell's going to want a new deal.
Devin Lloyd, not long after. Like, it gets really, really thin. So that's fine. You know, we all see it all the time. Patrick Mahomes gets the bag, and then it's, okay, now we got to go cheap. And now we got to draft these guys. And not only do we have to draft them, these guys have to be dudes. And we all know that Balky's drafts haven't been that well. So if you're willing to bet on that, that's cool. But just know that that's what you got to do.
Yes. And the bigger overarching issue with this, and I think this is where because I don't want to make it seem like I'm taking up for Trent Baalke right now. There's a lot of decisions Trent Baalke has made that I do not like. If it were up to me, he would not be the general manager. So I'm not sitting here trying to tell you that Trent Baalke is Howie Roseman. I don't believe that. I was just kind of pointing out how, you know, the discourse changes very quickly on what decision is supposed to be made. And if the decision that every fan wants to make ends up backfiring a couple months later, the entire fan base is going to act like nobody ever wanted to do that except the GM. All that said, though, the overarching issue here, in my opinion, and what I think is coming back a little bit to bite them in the ass from a couple years ago and since then, and I think this is the main black eye on Trent Baalke's resume here in Jacksonville, they have not hit on enough draft picks to justify moving on from some of these more expensive free agents they've signed in the last couple of years to really build up this roster and make it better. This roster was probably the worst roster in the league in 2021. Okay? Urban Meyer was a horrible coach. This was a horrible roster. They picked first overall and got Trayvon Walker for a reason, right? So that offseason, with a ton of cap space, they went and signed Foye Oluokun and Foley Fatukasi and Rayshon Jenkins and Darius Williams, and we the list goes on. We know the guys they signed. Not all of those guys were like break the bank expensive. Christian Kirk was, obviously.
Evan Ingram.
Evan Ingram ended up being really expensive the next year because you signed him to a long-term deal, which he earned. But the issue is the reason they had to go pay all these guys and sign all these guys is because their draft picks weren't panning out. And the draft picks are how you should be filling out the holes in the roster and how you should be saving money on the cap because it's cheap talent. And you just fill holes here and there with expensive free agents that you sign to a 2-year deal or whatever while you think you're in this window now and build up as strong of a roster as possible. But like a perfect example is Rayshon Jenkins was cut today. We all know Antonio Johnson, a 5th-round pick, who they're paying nothing, is going to replace him. So you've just replaced an expensive player who was good, not amazing, but a good player, Rayshon Jenkins, with who you expect to be just as good, if not better, in Antonio Johnson, and significantly cheaper and significantly easier on your books for the next couple of years. That cycle needs to be happening in more positions than it is.
Well,
why is there not?
It's not just the first and second round picks too. It's
correct.
It's your late rounds where you get your money.
Where is the Jaguars' Puka Nacua? Where is the Jaguars' Kyron Williams?
It's your Snoop Connor.
Right, exactly. Isaiah, look,
Shaq Quarterman.
Look at Isaiah Likely for the Ravens. Okay, if Isaiah Likely has another good season like he did this past year when Mark Andrews got hurt, Mark Andrews won't be on the Ravens for much longer.
He'll be getting paid
because he's going to be really expensive, and you're going to have this much cheaper guy that's giving you a close, if it's not the exact amount, a pretty close level of production for a hell of a lot cheaper. And then when his contract is up, you see if you need to pay him. If not, if you got another rookie or a young player that's giving you production, you do it again. That's how this is supposed to work. But Trent Baalke has just missed on too many draft picks. This is why they're in this position. Because look, a big reason that the fans are so upset about potentially losing Calvin Ridley is because his replacement, his immediate replacement, is not on the roster. That person doesn't exist. That really, really supremely talented, deep threat, outside guy is not on the team.
No, it's not a free agency, probably, and it's
right. And
you are crossing your fingers because you're probably not going to get that top end receiver at 17, probably.
And I'm using this specific guy as an example, but there's a ton of other guys they could have potentially picked. I'm just using him as an example because he was so good last year. What if the Jags had drafted Puka Nacua? And again, I'm not saying it had to be him specifically, but just as an example. If Puka Nacua played for the Jaguars and he was as good as he was last year for the Rams, you think anybody would give a crap about letting Calvin Ridley walk?
No.
They'd be like, all right, dude, see ya. Cool. Christian Kirk's coming back healthy.
And everybody and all the fans would understand the business side of it too.
Correct.
It would be understandable.
Correct. And I am still of the belief that at some point they need to draft the receiver. And I think that's the first part of this conversation where I probably disagree with you a bit. I'm okay with, but I think the majority of people are on your side. I'm a little bit on an island here. I am okay with letting Calvin Ridley walk, take a huge mega contract with some other team, and draft a guy in the second or third round. Because can we agree they're almost for sure going to draft a corner at 17?
Yeah,
I think it's
that's where I kind of want to go next.
It's a foregone conclusion almost at this point. They're taking a corner at 17. So let's just assume for a second they are. This is one of the deepest wide receiver classes ever. So I think you can get a first round talent in the second or third.
Oh, without question. Like the way the draft is this year, it's Neighbors and Marvin Harrison will go top 10, top 12.
Rome Odunze will go in that
Rome Odunze, yeah, because he'll probably go top 15. And then after that, it's like 8, 9 receivers in the second round. And the way, like growing up in football was always the athlete always played running back. It's now receiver. Like there is no can't miss running back right now. It's all can't miss receivers. Like if you look in high school right now, Jamie French is the guy.
Yeah.
He's like the number one person in Jacksonville. If it's not him, it's the guy that's a year below him, Naeem Burrows at Bowles. He's a receiver. So like every year now, and even next year too, I know we're not talking about next year's draft class, there's just receivers all over the place. Now, can you hit on them? Can you get
Correct.
A guy that what characteristics you want in a guy, and can he fit in your offense, and yada yada yada.
Can they complement the other weapons you already have? Like I think part of the problem they ran into 2 years ago, and it's why they traded for Calvin, is because they didn't have anybody they felt like was a super dominant outside guy. They had Ingram, who was going to play the tight end. They had Christian Kirk, who was dominating the slot. Zay plays outside, but can also play inside, and he's not. Zay is a good player, but Zay is not.
And now you take your top off, kind of.
Not CeeDee Lamb or someone like that, So it was like, okay, with Calvin, we get Zay Jones on steroids. Is the thought process. Was Calvin that this season? I don't think so.
No, but
he was really good. He was really good, and I want him back. I'm not trying to say I don't. But back to the draft thing. Say they draft, just making up a name. Say they draft Keon Coleman in the second round. And
that's
he's
great value.
And he's extremely productive. You're going to forget about Calvin Ridley real fast. Everyone's going to be like, all right, no problem. This is exactly what happened with Leonard Fournette. Remember they cut Leonard Fournette right before the season started, and everybody's like, what the hell are you doing? Why would you cut Leonard Fournette? James Robinson has 1,000 yards. Nobody really thought it was a big deal they cut Leonard Fournette because they had another guy, and they struck gold with James Robinson, undrafted guy that played really well. I'm not saying you got to go get someone like that. But again, if you're willing to invest a second or third round pick at the receiver position, you're banking on that guy being a great player.
So unbeknownst to what we know, what they're going to do in free agency, if Calvin Ridley leaves, what is your position? Just give me your top 3 position groups that the Jaguars have to address and just say free agency in the first round.
Free agency in the first round.
Yeah, so the weakest parts are corner. Right now it's corner with Darius Williams cut, the interior O-line, interior D-line, receiver.
So those are your positions?
Yes.
You're saying I mean I agree. Yeah, they're
so rank of those four, give me like 1, 2, 3.
Like biggest need to least big need out of this?
Like you have to address this position if Calvin Ridley leaves.
This is my opinion or what I think they'll do.
Your opinion.
My opinion, what I would do if I'm Trent Baalke in this situation, interior O-line is still the biggest need.
Okay.
In my opinion. I think those three can't play. I think Ezra Cleveland, Brandon Sheriff, Luke Fortner, I think those three together are a disaster.
And then it's okay, who's 2?
Second, I'm going corner now with Darius Williams gone.
Okay. And then 3?
3, I'm going to go defensive line still.
Okay.
And I go receiver 4.
Okay.
Still.
I'd agree with most of that. And this is another thing. If we all believe that Trevor's going to play well and better this year 4, so he'll be a top 10 at his best, like we saw in the playoff run, a top 5 quarterback. Really good quarterbacks develop receivers regardless of how good or average or mediocre they are. So
you'll see Parker Washington have this great season. Like
we see all the time. How many times do you see? I mean, Rashee Rice was an average guy. If Rashee Rice played for more than half the league, we wouldn't know his name.
Correct.
But Patrick Mahomes makes him this really good guy. He gets 10 catches, 100 yards down the stretch in December, and it's like, oh, look, he's a pretty good guy. It's like, no, Patrick Mahomes developed him into somebody that's really, really good. I can remember, like Juju Smith-Schuster. He was with Pittsburgh, was really good, and then since he's left, he hasn't really been the same. That's also a big factor that goes into it. So let's move on to the first round pick, since we kind of hinted on it. Darius Williams let go. The Jags saved $10.5 million. Do you think, since he was cut, that it's all chips to the table that they're going to get a DB at number 17?
Yes. I think almost for sure. They made it painfully obvious how in love they are with this corner class at the Combine. Trent Baalke said it's no secret we need to add to the corner position. When at the time, it was like you wouldn't have, if Darius Williams was still on the roster, I don't even know if you would have listed that in the top 5 of needs for the Jaguars. Obviously now you do, because Darius Williams, one of your starters, is gone now. And Trey Herndon will probably be gone as well. So in principle, that's 2 starters, because Trey Herndon was a starter for one point in time before he got injured. At this point, based on what they said at the Combine, and based on the fact that they cut Darius Williams, and based on the fact that there's no clear replacement on the roster for him, all that added up together with the fact that even without them saying anything, if you do just look at mock drafts and look at the boards, there is a lot of value at corner at around where the Jags are going to pick. In that kind of teens range, there's a lot of good cornerbacks that will more than likely, at least one of them that you really like, is going to be available. Nate Wiggins from Clemson, Quinyon Mitchell from Toledo.
Got Iowa, the 2 guys from Bama.
Cooper DeJean from Iowa, Kool-Aid, McKinstry, and the other Terrion Arnold. I mean, I just gave you 5 names. Unless there's a crazy run on corners.
Which probably won't happen before Jacksonville picks.
Agreed. More than likely, at least like 4 of those are going to be available for the Jags to pick their favorite.
Would you consider trading back to like 21, 22 if you knew you could still get a decent person? Because Jacksonville is literally, they're in that spot where a playoff team could trade up to go a run at whoever it is, a guy that could fall in the draft like a Brock Bowers from Georgia, the tight end. Like, that's the window that Jacksonville is in. So, I mean, there's just so many situations. I don't like to sit here and say, well, the Jaguars need to get a DB at 17 because we let go of DW. I mean, what happens if Rome Odunze from Washington, he falls to 17? You're going to tell me you're going to pass up on that guy?
They better not.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Or the number one corner may not be there, but the number two corner might be there still from on their big board. There's so many what ifs that I would still, all things considered, from the four position groups that we mentioned, interior O-line, interior D-line, receiver, corner, if you think that he is the best available of whoever those four position groups are, I'd be fine just taking that.
So let me take you through something real quick. Round 1, pick 27, trade down from Buffalo. The Jacksonville Jaguars select Anton Harrison, offensive tackle, Oklahoma. Okay, that's a trade down.
Twice.
Trade down twice, yep. I want to say it was the Steelers maybe before the Bills. I'm not sure. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, it might have been.
After the Anton Harrison pick, Brenton Strange, Tank Bigsby, Ventrell Miller, Tyler Lacey, Yasir Abdullah, Antonio Johnson, Parker Washington, Christian Braswell, Eric Hallett, Cooper Hodges, Derek Parrish, Raymond Vohasek. Other than Antonio Johnson, I just gave you a bunch of nobodies.
I'm not willing to give up on Tank yet, but yeah.
Why did I just read off the 2023 draft class? Because the Jaguars last year did exactly what you're talking about. They had a little bit of a later pick, but they traded back twice, and they still got their guy, and Anton Harrison. Who did that really result in? There's a bunch of nobodies, man, for the most part. I hope some of these guys turn out well. I agree with you. I'm not giving up yet on Brenton Strange and Tank Bigsby and Ventrell Miller and Tyler Lacey. I'm going to give them a chance. They're only second-year players. But most of those didn't do anything for me last year.
No.
Nothing. So when you're saying, would you trade back? Sure, I'll trade back. But what am I getting? Am I trading back and it's going to be a fourth rounder that doesn't play? Or am I trading back and it's going to be a third-round running back that fumbles all the time? This is my pessimism, and this is the problem with Trent Baalke, in my opinion. I don't think that he makes bad deals. I don't think that he's bad at... I think he's actually pretty good at trading and getting some value in the draft and still getting a guy they like and manipulating the board and how they can still get value they like at different positions. But the problem is on Sundays, these guys can't play. That's the issue. So if they take a corner or seven, or if they have a corner they really like, they think Terrion Arnold is just the best. I'm just making up somebody. They think Terrion Arnold is the best. This guy is the next Revis. Okay? And we know that the next 5 teams behind us are not interested in taking a corner. So yeah, we'll trade back to 23 or something. And we'll still take him. Great. But if the trade ends up being a nobody that doesn't play, then what the hell are we doing? And that's my issue here, is more of these draft picks have to hit, man. If the Darius Williams decision, a lot of people are upset about it today. Everyone kind of understood the Rayshon thing. Everyone kind of understood the Foley Fatukasi thing. The Darius Williams cut this morning was the surprise that a lot of people didn't see coming and also didn't like. A lot of people were critical of that move. He was really good last year, really productive. Why are you letting a good player go? It makes financial sense. We talked about this last week on the podcast. Because you save $10.5 million. That's not nothing. That's significant money that you can allocate elsewhere. So I have no problem with cutting Darius Williams. But to the point you've been making, if you take a corner at pick number 17, or if you trade back, pick somewhere else, that guy better be able to play.
Well, yeah, and it's from last year. It was like, how many needs did we have last year going into the offseason? It was pass rush. And then that was really about it.
That was about it.
This year, it's more position groups.
Interior O-line, interior D-line, corner, receiver. And not only are they needs, they're like dire
You got to have
needs.
it. You got to have it.
It's like press the panic button if this doesn't get addressed.
And then also, you're giving up a third rounder to Atlanta regardless of what happens with Calvin Ridley. We all know, you just read that draft class and then the draft class before. Baalke's not the best draft guy.
Correct.
And the thing is, with drafting, you're guessing. Everybody wants to say, I knew this guy was going to be good and I saw him play. You never know. You don't. it's not. There is a lot of gray, and you don't know how a guy is going to react when he steps on an NFL field where everything is an even playing field. There are so many guys when they get to college, and yes, they're good guys in college, but they're the guy. And they don't have to work as hard, and their talent gets them by, and they're still the guy. And you don't know what it's like until they get to the NFL when everybody's on an even playing field, and you say, okay, let's see how you do. And nobody knows. There's some guys that are better than others, like we talked about with the Rams with Les Snead. He's good at drafting. Kyron Williams and Puka Nacua and guys of that nature. But you can't say, I don't want to trade back because, well, he didn't have a good draft class. And I'm not saying that you say this, but I'm saying just in general from fans that I don't want to do that because, well, I saw what he did last year and it's not no good. It's like, okay, well, how are you going to get more players? If there's a good deal and you can still go back a couple of spaces and pick him an extra pick, like, it's worth it.
I agree. And listen, squeeze every ounce of value and every way to get an extra player that you can in the draft. I totally agree with that. But this is the track record of Trent Baalke, and this is why, in my opinion, he shouldn't be the general manager. And I don't know if he will be the general manager next year.
We all agree.
Yeah, we do. You're not wrong that the draft is in a lot of senses a crapshoot, and you're throwing at the wall and hoping
you're throwing darts at a dartboard.
Yeah,
you're just hoping you get a bullseye.
Correct. That said, certain teams seem to hit a lot more bullseyes than others. Certain teams, there's always a little bit of uncertainty. There's no 100% in the draft. But why does it seem like certain teams always hit, especially late round gems, more than others? Why do the Ravens get Isaiah Likely's of the world
in Kansas City? Well, to me, with that, it's more of the GM and the head coach. This is what made New England so well for all those years. The front office and the head coach are in unison on what they want to do, and they bring in guys that fit their culture. And it doesn't feel that way here. For example, we have Jeff Lageman on the show plenty of times. Brenton Strange, coming out of college, was a really good receiving tight end. Well, what did they do this past year? They put him on the end, and all he did was block. And then they put him at fullback. Okay, well, if you're a really good receiving tight end, why are you playing those two positions? So it could also be Baalke thinks one way, and I want to force Peterson to do this, and then Peterson says, no, I don't think that. I think that's a big part of it, too. And if you don't
thought this guy was good value, so you have to make it work on the field.
Right, and then that's another huge component. That's why all the good teams, they all see eye to eye, and they make it work. And if they have a disagreement, they respect the disagreement, and then they find a way to make it work. And I don't think you have that here. And I think that's the way with every good team. Every good team has that. Every bad team, they don't have agreements from the front office to the head coach.
And it just seems like there's too many strikeouts, man. Why is Walker Little not a stalwart on this offensive line right now? What Walker Little, in my opinion, is a miss of a pick so far. Otherwise, they wouldn't even be considering keeping Cam Robinson. They saved $16 million if they let Cam Robinson walk. And Cam Robinson's a good player, don't get me wrong, but he's not Trent Williams. And he's hurt all the time. And he got suspended last year for 4 games for PEDs. And they still aren't sure if they're ready to get rid of him.
Yeah.
If Walker Little was any good at all in their eyes, that wouldn't be the case.
Well, and they were probably moving on from him last year.
Yes. And this is the problem. This is precisely what we're saying. The reason the Jaguars have all these questions to answer, the reason that they have to let these good players walk out the door, who players are like, why in the world are you letting Darius Williams go? Why are you letting Rayshawn Jenkins go? Is because the reason that there is concern of letting them go is because there's not enough draft picks to replace them. Because if there were, the fan base's opinion would be, oh, we're good. We got so-and-so. Yeah, we're fine. We don't need to... Everybody's cool with Rayshon Jenkins walking out the door. We got Antonio Johnson. We're good. Well, what if there was already a great other corner opposite Tyson Campbell that they had spent, a third-round pick on or something, or had just hit? I think Monteric Brown was fine last year. Say Monteric Brown was, really good last year.
And we still don't know with Cooper Hodges either.
On the offensive line.
Yeah.
Right. True. I just think there's still not enough. What if last year Tank Bigsby was, really good? Next year, because next year they're going to have to figure out Travis Etienne, you'd be like, see ya. A running back? Second contract? No, thanks. I got Tank Bigsby. But Tank Bigsby's terrible. Until we're going to give him more time. He was just a rookie. But until further notice, Tank Bigsby's awful.
Until he fixes his fumbling issue. Yeah.
And the guy is just bad luck, man. Every time, even if it's not him, when he goes on the field, just bad stuff happens.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but it's weird. It's like every time he's on the field, it's like, no, there's going to be a turnover. It's terrifying. So there's got to be more hits in the draft. We agree on that. We also agree that Josh Allen's going to get paid this offseason, though. Right?
Yes.
And by the way, that's going to make it a lot
Before
easier.
Camp.
And that's going to make it a lot easier on the books for 2024. I looked it up before this just for some context. Nick Bosa is averaging $34 million a year for his deal, which is far above anybody else right now.
Yeah.
There's some other guys, Josh Allen being one of them, that kind of got to fill in the gap. But right now, there's an ocean between Nick Bosa and what everybody else is getting paid. Just because, again, there's some guys this offseason. TJ Watt might restructure. Myles Garrett might redo his deal. Josh Allen's going to get paid. Danielle Hunter. There's some guys that kind of need to fill in the gap between Nick Bosa and Montez Sweat. In between there. But Nick Bosa is averaging $34 million a year, but it's still pretty early in his deal, right? He was only $11 million on the books this past season for the Niners, and he's only 14 this year. And then I think in 25, and then really 26 and 27 is when the deal really starts to get expensive. So what if you sign Josh to that 30, 32 million a year range, maybe 28, 32 million a year range, somewhere in there. And instead of a $24 million cap hit on the 24 books, which is going to be right now if you continue with the tag, it's probably only going to be 12, something like that. Well, dude, that's another, $10 to $12 million probably.
That you could save right now to win right now.
And go get a guard. Go get a big hoss in the middle. You talked about it last week. If they spend big money on a free agent somewhere, where's it probably going to be?
Probably going to be interior D-line.
Go do it. The money's right there.
Right.
You just cut Darius Williams. You saved $11 million or 10.5. Go do it. Go do it. And then these other positions that you just left holes for, draft a guy, and that guy needs to hit. There's not a GM that fails on the majority of their draft picks, because he hasn't failed on every draft pick. That's not fair to say. He hasn't. Anton Harrison's a good player from this past draft. We'll see on some of the other guys. It seems like Antonio Johnson was a great steal. There's guys, but not enough. Then if you supplement in the draft well, and these guys play, you get rookie contributions, then you're going to have a good football team. If not, you're going to struggle again. Is it really that simple?
It is that simple. All right, putting a bow on the Jags. Gators play a big game tonight against Alabama. I think they win barely. I think they're at home. They just lost to South Carolina, close game Saturday.
What did I tell you last week? I said I think they're going to lose to South Carolina. They're going to beat Bama.
Yeah.
I said I think that's what's going to happen.
Yeah. You think they win by 3, 5, 7? Bama can just Bama. I watched that whole Alabama-Tennessee game. Golly, Alabama's fun to watch when they're good. They can shoot the ball out the gym.
They feel like an NBA team when you're watching. They're obviously not as good as an NBA team, but the style of play is NBA-ish.
Yeah,
it's a lot of threes.
Yeah.
It's threes and dunks. That's how they score, which is how NBA teams score. There's not a lot of mid-range.
No, there's no mid-range.
They only get to the line when they're pounding it in the paint. But they make free throws, and yeah, they're really good. They're really explosive. But I still think Florida. I think Florida wins by. I think Florida wins by 5.
Yeah.
By 5. I think with like a minute left, Florida's up like 3, and Bama's got to start fouling. Or they wouldn't foul at that point, but you know what I mean. Florida wins by 5 to 7 points, I think.
Yeah.
And I think they're winning most of the game. They're up like 2 to 3 most of the game.
Yeah, they fell short of Bama, whatever it was, 2 weeks ago at their house in overtime. I think they get this one tonight. They play Vandy Saturday, and then from there it's conference tournament and then the real tournament, which is kind of crazy to say. Anything else before we go?
Yeah, we got a surprise topic. This is the most important part of the podcast, bro.
That's why I brought it up. You usually have a.
It's by far the most important part of the podcast. Yeah. Okay. Arch Manning opts out of. Oh my
gosh, who cares?
How devastated are you on a scale of 1 to 10?
At the million. Like, okay, you know what I will do? I'm gonna go make Arch Manning. And then nobody's going to know.
Right.
And I'm going to guess whatever his arm strength is and his mobility and like.
So I don't care either. But the reason I bring it up and the more serious part of the topic is why?
Yeah, there's no.
I'm genuinely curious why. I don't know does he think $600 in the free copy of the game just isn't enough? Because you don't have to do anything. It's just you're right. You don't have to do anything at all.
What's even more weird to me is like I don't see an 18-year-old making a decision not to be in a video game. It's more of somebody in his ear telling him not to do it.
It's the whole Manning crew.
I want to know who is in his ear that's like to not do this.
Well, I'll give you one guess is whoever it is, their last name is Manning.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that much. It's
or whoever represents him for NIL and all that, which I don't know how much. It'll make no sense. It's a free $600 that you didn't have before,
and he doesn't play.
And it doesn't matter that it doesn't mean anything to him because you grew up with wealth around you. Like, you want to be in a video game or not be in a video game?
And again, you don't have to do anything. They just put you in the game.
Right.
And I know it's your rights and you're selling your name basically and all that. And I get that. I get how that works. But like, to me, it's like someone walking up to you saying, do you want $600? It's right here in cash. And you just be like, nah, I'm good.
And what's the negative impact of you being in the game?
None. There is none.
Like it's not like it hurts your name or your legacy or what could happen to you moving forward? Like,
right.
Nothing.
So my question was, and it was part of the reason I was asking why, do you think that in the future there will be a decent amount of guys that do this, or do you think that this is a weird one-off?
Yeah, I think it's a one-off.
I think any given year there might be like a couple of dudes
and it's like,
that are weird about it.
I saw some guys are like, well, he knows his value. Like,
what the hell does that mean?
For a video game,
what
that
value? He doesn't play. He doesn't play.
Same. You know what I was really hurt by? I mean, I almost didn't make out of bed. Johnny Manziel's not going to be at the Heisman anymore.
I saw until Reggie Bush gets reinstated.
Yeah, like, okay. Like, that was literally my whole point. Okay.
You mean you're not going to watch the Heisman ceremony next year?
I don't even watch the Heisman.
And be in tears that Johnny's not up there?
Did you? Okay, honestly, did you watch the Heisman when Daniels won it?
I watch it sometimes. I don't watch it others. It's not like appointment viewership.
No.
It'll be like if I'm just chilling, got nothing else to do, I'll watch it.
Yeah.
I don't remember if I did or not. I know I watched Caleb Williams 2 years before, just because I just had it on, though.
Right, yeah. I watched Devontae Smith when he won it because I had it on. Honestly, the last, I did 7, 8.
I did watch this past year, and you know why? And you know why I remember that?
Because you bet on it.
No. I watched it because I knew that Peyton Manning documentary was coming on afterwards. Or it wasn't Peyton Manning, but it was the 97 Heisman race.
That was excellent.
And what I loved about it was I knew that they would bring up the fact that Peyton Manning never beat Florida.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to get to enjoy that for a couple of minutes. So I was like, this should be fun. Well, so I just watched the Heisman because it was before.
I hit the record button on the Heisman doc, and then I watched it the next morning.
Yeah. And it was... The Heisman, to watch it live, is a little bit more intriguing in the years where you're really not sure who's going to win, like the day of.
That hasn't happened much lately.
It's not very often that it does. I feel like typically...
the Heisman, it's not that... It's just not the same anymore. Like it used. Number one, it used to mean a lot more. Number two, it's just turned into a regional. It's turned into a regional vote. That's whoever the best quarterback is gets the award.
Yeah, basically.
That's all it is. The guy in the South votes for the guy in the South. The guy out West votes for the guy out West. Like, and that's all it is. And it's just it's very predictable for what it's become now.
And
I'm not a big awards guy either. Like, I can't. Nothing aggravates me more when they're like, this coach is good. He won Coach of the Year. Like, I don't need an award to say that Mike Vrabel is a good coach.
Yeah. And I think Vegas has kind of hurt this too. Like, not that, like, obviously Vegas has always been a part of this. You've always been able to bet on these things. But with it being as popular as it is and as legal as it is now and as just normally out there and publicized and covered, everybody knows, the day of, the day before, what the odds are for the Heisman, and it becomes painfully obvious who's going to win.
Yeah.
Like Jaden Daniels was the overwhelming favorite going into the Saturday night that he eventually won. So that's kind of killed it too, because like if one guy's an overwhelming favorite, then it's going to win. He's going to win. It's like there's no suspense in watching. And the whole point of watching is there's supposed to be this big suspense that you're not sure who's going to win.
Yeah, they only spend 57 minutes talking about each kid and
their families
how they were in
and
diapers.
All that.
It's all the fun stuff. All right, I got to go grill and feed
yourself.
Family's coming over, so.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. You're feeding the whole squad? What are you grilling?
Burgers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
that's big time.
Yeah, so I'm gonna get stuck in traffic, and I'm gonna do that. So we got to end here. So appreciate y'all listening.
You putting cheese and bacon on there?
Cheese.
No bacon?
Nah, no bacon.
What the
I'll
hell,
put
dude?
some mayo and lettuce, and that's it.
No bacon though?
Nah, no bacon.
Why not?
Bacon's a little mess, greasy everywhere.
But it's delicious.
It is. I like bacon by itself too. Put on my egg sandwich, and that's it.
That's the thing is you just take the bacon off the burger and just eat it because it's bacon and it's good.
Yeah, I don't know. It's fine without it to me. Anywho, I'm Dylan Denmark. That's Graham Marsh. Get us on Twitter at 1010XL Denmark and at 1010XL Graham. I need to start promoting that we're on the 1010XL podcast platform at the beginning of the show. Maybe I can remember that next time. Until then, y'all enjoy yourself, and we'll see y'all Friday, probably. Maybe.
Yes, sir.